Cool. We might as well start. Hi everybody, welcome to today's session. Today we have the wonderful opportunity of seeing some new and fresh-faced coaches who are going to be running for, or maybe running for, stuff on Saturday at elections. So yeah, we have 4 people. We have James Redford, who will be doing a little session on man defense. We have Colin, who will be doing something on Hex Offense. Then Guy doing something on running for, and then Xander doing something on throwing in rougher and windy conditions. So yeah. It should be a great session. They'll be doing about 10 to 15 minutes each, and then kind of going to the next person, and I'll be popping up in between just to introduce the next one. So yeah, without further ado, I'll hand over to Redford, who's going first. Yeah.
Hello everybody. So yeah, I'm going to be doing man defense session. It's going to be quite a beginner focused session because I honestly thought there'd be some more beginners here. Unfortunately, there is no freshers, but we will make do. So yeah, just got a basic diagram set out here of what a stack would look like. There would be 4 here, but drawing circles is harder than you think on paint. Yeah, so the important things to note is we've got a flick force here. So we got this guy here. And we've got our offense in red, defense in blue. Disc here. Yeah. So when playing the vertical stack, which is obviously what we're used to, there are 3 main directions the offense, the runner wants to go. They can either go under open side, under break side, or deep. You can consider that as 2 different ones, but kind of in reality, it kind of just becomes one, especially outdoors. So the main thing the defender wants to focus on is trying to take away one of the options. This one, the break side, should already be covered up by the dump, but obviously you still got to consider it. You got to be close enough that they can't just get a free run to the open side. But then with your positioning here, I'm just delete some of these lines. You want to position yourself so you can take away one of the options. So here we've got kind of an underneath look. So you will be taking away the under, though equally you could be standing up. You could kind of position yourself here and just to take away the deep threat instead. Yeah, so obviously there's many different ways to play the a man defense. But it generally boils down to 2 main styles. Oh my god, it's so hard to use this. Yes, either playing. I'm just going to draw a new one. Either playing close up and bodying, because in Frisbee you can't run through your defender. Their space is their own, and yeah, they can't run straight through you to foul. Or you can give them more space, and as that gives you some time to read what they're doing and gives you basically more time to react. Give me 1 second so I can restart my stream because I've got to go on a different tab. So yeah, here I've just got bullied my flatmate into just letting me show some basic defense on him. So imagine the disc is where the camera is, and they're running to the open side, which is going to be towards this bike. Yeah, so again, this isn't full pace. This is on concrete in trainers after not doing much sport for 4 months. But this is the basics of what you want here. So this first one is the up close bodying. Again, my form isn't good. I'm leaning too far back, but we can ignore that for now. The keys are just getting nice and close to your marker so that they can't run where they want to go, in this case, which is under. Instead, they're forced to take a long route around. My eyes are also in the wrong place. I should be staring at their hips because, as we all know, with Shakira, hips don't lie. And that's kind of what you want to be keying off when you're marking your man. So yeah, in this example, he has to go around me, and I'm able to keep pushing him wide, which would make the throw more difficult. I'll just play that. something like that. Then I've got more. Then I'm showing more of the off motion. So here I'm kind of standing a few yards off, which just kind of gives me some time to read him. Again, my eyes should be more at his hips, but again, I just told my flatmate who's never played frisbee before to run in that direction, so there wasn't too much to read this time. But yeah, and even with the reduced technicality of everything, watch my legs. I'm doing a cross step, which essentially gives me more ability to move. Is there any way to play that slowly? I don't think so. Yeah, so the cross step, which basically that means I can move, be more agile, move more quickly, and match what they're doing. Because there's a defender, you have to follow your man, not the other way around. Then I've got the same examples for stopping the deep, where I am again close to him. And yeah, in that, when you're deep, you're kind of giving them the under, so they're normally just gonna take it. So you can be prepared to make a play on the disc, or yeah, just try and keep your man out as much as you can. Then I have an off-man version. Yeah, I got more of a spaced version of the deep as well, but that one's not as used because that literally just gives them a free under. Maybe if you're against a really speedy guy, it's a good option, but not so much others. Let me just bring up the video. Give me 1 second. I pressed the wrong button. Sorry, give me 1 second. Okay, so we're gonna just quickly look at one drill, which is great for man defense and learning or change directions, your footwork, everything you need, basically. So it's the end cut drill. So in this, you will have. I'll use paint again. Why not? So you'll have cones set up in a like this.
I think because you shared your.
Oh yeah,
not showing up.
Yep.
I could see you move your mouse, but it was obviously.
Exactly. So yeah, so you'll have 5 or 6 cones set up like this, and here you'll have two. You have you and your marker. You have an offense and a defense. Sorry. And so you start at one cone, run up like that, down like that, up like that, down like that. You can add some extra wrinkles into it once it gets boring, but that's essentially the goal of it. And the goal is to imagine the disc is in a place and then stay in the right positioning as your defense as they turn with good footwork, never turning your back on your marker. Just kind of like a lot of the keys that we learned. So yeah, as I just said, trying to keep your eyes on the marker there, on the person you're marking and the person on the disc as much as you can, just so you always know what's happening, and make sure your feet don't get caught out, your hips are still faced towards them. They're kind of a lot of the keys that we like to teach. So yeah, again, here's my flatmate who I got to do this as well. So here I'm imagining the disc is, again, kind of where the camera is, or maybe slightly to the left. And yeah, just kind of like running with him. Again, with bad form because I'm on concrete in trainers, but that gives you the basics of the drill. And then you're trying to keep your eyes on the hips. Make sure you try and not just turn because you know they have to for the drill. Try and keep it as realistic as possible. And on grass with boots, as they'll build it up from kind of a 50% speed, something similar to that, to trying to get it as game speed as possible, because that's one of the kind of core movements of playing defense or man defense. So yeah, and I didn't reshare the video. Did it show?
Yeah, it's fine.
Oh,
we saw it.
Okay. I haven't figured out the Discord sharing yet. Yeah. Any questions to anyone about anything from the keys to the marking or positioning, the drill, anything?
I don't think so.
Okay, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah. I've done everything I've got then. Yeah, thanks everyone.
That's great. Thank you very much. Why do you have Discord on light mode? Is your only question. That's Graham. Oh no, I thought it looked quite nice on light mode.
It is. I don't know what dark mode looks like. Is dark mode nicer?
It's just everything's
Hey,
black.
dark mode.
I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know.
Iona says it's
I don't
dark.
know. I don't know.
Anyway, thank you very much, James. That was a great introduction to some man defense stuff and a good drill there as well. Cool. Our next person is Colin, who will be showing us a little bit of Hex Offense. So if I hand
dark
over,
mode sounds nicer.
if I hand over to Colin.
Yes. Hello. Thank you. So Hex Offense. I'll just set up my PowerPoint. But basically what I'm going to do, because Hex Offense is quite different to the standard sort of vertical stack, horizontal stack that we do, I'll spend a little while sort of explaining what it is, how it works, and then I'll look at some videos of teams playing Hex and just talk through it. So it's called Hex, obviously, because you set up in a hexagon shape, as you can see. So the red team are attacking to the right here, and the player on the disc has another player next to them. There's a central player with 2 wings and 2 players further deep. So the reason this is quite different to sort of vertical stack and horizontal stack is that these players don't have sort of set positions. There aren't really set handlers and cutters. It's just a case of moving around, maintaining this shape. And the main part of Hex is sustaining flow, by which I mean keeping the disc moving, always making a pass when it's open, rather than looking to make up yards with every single pass that you make. And in terms of sort of movement that you do in Hex, rather than the usual sort of cutting orders and patterns, it's just sort of vaguer principles and guidelines for movement. So just an example of like how the movement often works. This central player will quite often run deep, creating a space in the middle for another player to come into and receive the disc. Obviously, the other players in this time will be always adjusting themselves, trying to maintain the shape. And quite often, when this central player receives the disc, one of the back players will sprint towards them and just look for a little pop pass so that the whole team can move up the pitch. For a more general look at how you should move in Hex, there is this decision tree, which is obviously quite complicated, so I won't go through the whole thing. But basically, if you don't have the disc, you want to be looking around at your teammates, making sure that the team as a whole is maintaining the shape. And you either want to be looking to run into a space where you can receive the disc, or run into a space which means that you create a space for another teammate to run into and receive the disc. And you want to be looking to do that at all times, pretty much. And if you do have the disc in your hands, you want, if there is a pass open, you always want to make it. So obviously, ideally, you would make a forward pass, but a backwards pass or a sideways pass are equally as important to maintain the flow, keep the disc moving. One important thing to note as well is when you're playing vertical stack, if you get the disc on the sideline, you'll quite often automatically sort of pivot outwards to look for a throw up the line. But in Hex, you don't really want to do that. Instead, you want to always face the center of the space. One, because there's going to be more options for you to throw to there, just because of the way the team's set up. and 2 because when you do throw it, a player receiving the disc in the middle of the pitch is going to have more options to pass it on from them because they should be surrounded by 6 teammates, rather than having only maybe 2 or 3 options if they're on the wing. So a couple of other things just to point out. When the disc is on the sideline, you don't want to all rush forward, which can be quite tempting, but it just loses the shape and it doesn't give as many options for the thrower or the next player that's going to have the disc. You just want to make sure you maintain that shape. There's an option backwards, sideways, and forwards at all times for the player on the disc. Similarly, when you're near the end zone, you don't want to crowd the end zone like this, which can be quite tempting. But there's just no space in behind to make deep cuts, and there's going to be a lot of defenders in the space that are going to cut out your passes. So you want to just hold back, maintain your shape, and when you set up like this, one of these 2 deep players has much more space to make a cut into the space, or even if one of the deep players came back into the middle, the central player could make a deep cut, and there's plenty of space to run into. So now we can look at a couple of videos that I'll just get up, a couple of clips, which I will play at half speed and just talk through them because I think it's quite useful to see it actually in action. So here the black team is playing Hex, Hammertron. As you can see, the player on the sideline has the disc. There's 2 back players, one just there and one just off the screen. A central player, far winger, and 2 deep players. So I'll just hit play and talk through it. So the first pass is nice and simple into the middle, and already the movement is beginning because this back player is starting to make a run up the line to make space for the wing player to come back into just behind the player on the disc and receive the pass. This player that just threw it is making a run up the line again to clear out the space in the middle, which this deep player can come back into, receive the disc. Player in the middle receives the disc, so what do the back players do? They sprint forwards to receive that pop pass. The whole team moves up the pitch. Player chooses to fake it there instead of throwing it. Probably could have thrown it up the line, but it's better to have it in the centre of the pitch. It gets swung across. This central player makes a run back, again opening up this space in the middle, which a deep player can come back into, receive the disc once again. The player in the middle receives the disc. A player comes forward, receives a pop pass, the whole team moves forward, and it's swung out wide. And this is a great bit of movement here from the deep player who notices that this player from the centre is making a deep cut. So instead of going deep themselves, they run back into the central space to drag their defender with them, and it's wide open for the throw down the line to score a point. In the second clip, the white team is playing Hex here. It's not that obvious right now. If I just let it play on a bit, you can more obviously see the Hex shape here. The 2 back players, wingers. The central player is quite deep at the moment, and then there's 2 deeps as well. So the central player is going deep, and the deep player comes back into the central space. He doesn't get it this time, but they swing it around. That central player then comes out wide, again opening up the central space, which the deep player comes back into, receives it. As soon as this goes forward, this back player is sprinting forwards to receive the pop pass so that the whole team can move forwards, and that is key in Hex. Goes through the middle again a little pop pass. And they swing it round. Now this central player here makes a run out wide open space in the middle. He receives it out wide. This player eventually sees the space, cuts back into it, receives it. Again, a little pop pass from the player sprinting forward. Now he's in loads of space. and it's a simple throw into the end zone for the point. So yeah, that's pretty much the basics of Hex. I hope that was helpful. And if anyone has any questions about Hex or how it works, then I will try to answer them.
Does anybody have any questions? Ooh, Sasha's
I,
typing.
I could ask one.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think are like the biggest weaknesses of Hex?
Well, I guess you can get a bit sort of muddled up. You might be getting in each other's way quite a bit because there isn't like a set cutting order. You sort of have to be thinking all of the time like where you need to be going next, because it's not just a set pattern. So I guess it might go wrong sometimes because of that, people getting in each other's way.
Okay, cool.
We have a question from Sasha. Why is it so useful to have a pop pass to the player sprint forward?
Because that just allows, because the furthest back player is sprinting forward and everyone in the team is moving forward. That's just a useful tactic to gain the whole team some yards up the pitch.
We have 3 people typing. 2 people typing. If you became a coach, would you try and incorporate Hex into Bear's offense or mostly stick with Vert/Horo, says Phoebe?
Well, I certainly think at the beginning it's best to like initially teach Vert and Horo to like freshers, but it would definitely be something I would consider, because I feel like in Bucks matches the other teams wouldn't be expecting us to play Hex, and if it worked for us and I felt it was working in training sessions, you know, I'd try it out a couple of times, and if it was working, then we'd definitely try it out in game. You know, like in game you can always try it, and if it's not working, then everyone knows how to play Vert Stack, so you can just swap back to it.
Iona asks, are there generally handlers / cutters, deep cutters, that try to migrate back to their positions in Hex, or do you just go whatever's closest / most useful?
Well, there definitely are like players that will generally be the handlers, or generally try to like be the one that gets back and is in that position. And obviously you'll want like your taller, faster players to be the ones that usually deep cut. But when you're like in the flow of it, if there's a space to go into and you're closest to it, then you should always, you know, it's not as set who the handlers will always be.
Yep. Yeah. Anybody else? We have a poll that's gone up. What's the best offense? Oh, Zipper. What was the one that Ronald did? It was just like curtains or something. Spider. Yeah. Thank you very much for that intro to Hex. I can vouch for the fact that the Hex can become quite confusing after, if you're not kind of sure what you're doing. I've played it before, and it can be interesting. Definitely has some uses, because the other team, like you said, can get a bit confused. And I think Felix, who from Felix Ultimate, he played it with his team, which I think was Sussex, maybe it was Sussex, and they went on to like win, I think like nationals or something, by playing lots of Hex. So who knows? Maybe it's the secret to winning. Cool. Thank you very much, Colin. Our next person is Guy, who will be looking at some running form. So if we go over to him.
Hello. So we just start with what good form should look like. We have the women's world record holder, from 1988, which is Florence, China, and this isn't her world record run because that was with terrible quality, but this is at the Olympics that year, and we'll just look at her form. So we'll just wait for it to get to a bit clearer. So you can see here she's kind of really retracting her leg as soon as it touches the ground, forming a kind of Z shape, which I promise there is a Z shape there. It is quite blurry. And then she's also got her foot what's known as dorsiflexed, which is just at a right angle, basically. She's kind of really flexing her toes upwards. And so then as she lands, she's striking on the kind of balls of her feet rather than the heel. So that kind of that adds more kind of spring and keeps you more steady. So rather than if you land on your heel, because if you land on your heel, you kind of spend time decelerating. I think I'll just show an example of that. So we have a lovely volunteer here sprinting for us. Oh, sorry, this is the wrong one. So you can see I'm really stretching my leg out and hitting the ground with my heel, and that's bad. You shouldn't do that. That kind of, you can see there's time spent when my leg is bending and slowing down before it pushes off again. And that kind of braking, that's kind of absorption before you propel off of your feet. So you want to really kind of focus on bringing your feet down directly under or just ahead of your center of gravity, which Florence China does really well. So you can see her foot contacts literally directly underneath her in a straight line, and that's really, really good. And then yeah, that's kind of my main focus on it. Is you can see she's dorsiflexed here, kind of a nice right angle there as she's kind of pushing off immediately as soon as her foot touches the ground. So you can see she's landing into it and pushing off. So if we can analyze the sprinting, you can see this a lot better. You can see I'm kind of landing more with my foot underneath my body. And there's a much better kind of posture in the whole thing. Does anybody have any kind of questions?
I have a question. What would you say is a good drill or kind of thing to do to try and kind of help you get into that kind of correct form?
So I'd say probably something like an A skip or an A march, where you kind of bring your knee up, focusing on really kind of compressing your shin to your knee, kind of, and then kind of stepping over your knee onto the ground, keeping your foot as dorsiflexed as you can, and just things like that. So an A skip or an A march.
We have a question from Daniel, who asks, outstretched fingers decrease drag or increase speed?
So
oh yeah, you have it in front of you. I mean, for the people who aren't.
Actually, I can stop sharing my screen now. So outstretched fingers, they don't reduce drag, but it is actually better to have your hands kind of relaxed and out rather than closed up in a fist, because that just kind of helps you better with the motion of moving your arms, if that makes sense. If you're all tight and kind of taut, you can tend to retract your arm too close to your body. You want it at kind of a right angle, typically. And to answer Sasha's question, running form actually can help with injury prevention. So if you get shin splints, that can actually be because you're overstriding and landing on your heel. So that's what very commonly causes shin splints in people, is that they're striking on their heel instead of midfoot or on the balls of their feet.
We've got 2 people typing. Oh, just Sasha.
So to train for sprinting, just kind of, you want to be doing sprints, obviously, but you shouldn't be training for speed at lower than 95% of your capacity. So if you've got 10 sprints set for the day, but you only do 2 of them at like 95% of your max speed, those are the only ones really useful for improving your speed. And then what else? Yeah, I mean, just basically sprinting training, like as in sprinting, doing sprints. You can also do specific leg work, so things like Nordic curls, where you have someone stand on your feet and just kind of try and keep your body straight as you go down. And Graham, running is useful in frisbee because if you don't run, you actually do get the disc, which you don't really want. So you should be moving. To move your arms, you should have them at kind of a right angle. So if I just screen again, you can see that you should have your kind of opposing arm to the leg that's to your, like the opposite leg. So if your left leg is out, you should have your right arm out, and it should kind of finish its movement about shoulder height. And then as you come through, you want your arm to be facing vertically down as your leg is contacting the ground, and then you want to kind of bring it back through the rear to a kind of right angle, as you can see here. Distance. So I'd say starting at about 30 meters is quite good, and then kind of I'd mix it up between kind of 30 and 80 meters, because in frisbee you're not going to be sprinting any further than that really. And how you're training. So if you're training for the start, then you want to really only run kind of 10-20 meters. But if you're training for more top end speed, then I'd say up to about 80 meters just for sprinting. I don't know if that made sense.
Any other questions from anybody? I don't think so. Thanks very much, Guy, for a little look into running form, how to do it properly. I'm sure it's very helpful for everybody. Cool. Our final person is Xander, who's going to do my words aren't working. He's going to do a little bit of a session on throwing in rougher and windy conditions. So if I hand over to him.
Okay. Well, I mean, earlier today I tried to go and get some clips, but the wind wasn't exactly as windy as I thought, so you get a nice face cam instead. Right. Firstly, sorry if I sound a little bit croaky. I've been ill over the weekend and I'm still slightly recovering from that. But yeah, right now I'm gonna talk a bit about how the wind affects how you throw a disc and how we need to change how we throw discs, specifically in windy conditions. as opposed to fair conditions or indoor conditions. I guess first things first is how a disc actually flies, and there's two main reasons for that. The first one is obviously the spin. The spin keeps the disc nice and level when in the air, so it doesn't move around. It doesn't cause a lot of drag by flying like this. It stays nice and flat, and the spin keeps it flat. Secondly, you've got this little curved section on the top, and it kind of flat at the bottom. This means that air, as it's flying over the disc, it moves faster, and faster air means there's a lower air pressure. You've got lower air pressure on top of the disc, higher air pressure underneath the disc. That causes some amount of lift. Now, this lift isn't enough to completely defy gravity, but it's enough to give it more of a flight. And that's also why the spin is so important, because it keeps the disc nice and level, and therefore giving it as much lift as possible. So in the wind, that changes how much air is flying or traveling around the disc. If you're throwing into the wind, for example, it's going to be as if you're throwing the disc much, much faster. There's going to be more air traveling over the disc, which means you're going to get more air traveling over, which means less pressure, which means more pressure underneath, which means more lift, which is generally why when you throw into the wind, the disc tends to rise. On the other hand, if you're throwing with the wind, relative to the disc, there's going to be less air passing over the disc, which means less lift, and the disc will drop faster. This means for the most important thing about throwing in the wind, and hopefully if there's only one thing you take away from this, is that if you're throwing into the wind, the disc will go up, which means you want to release the disc slightly lower. If you're releasing maybe at chest height, with a backhand, maybe release at hip height, or in very heavy winds, maybe like knee height in very, very extreme cases. Similarly, if you're throwing with the wind, you want to release slightly higher to counteract the dropping of the disc. Yeah. Okay. There's also a few other things you can do. For example, throwing the disc nice and or putting lots more spin on it, because as I said earlier, more spin means more stability. And the more stable the disc is, the less likely it's going to be caught by the wind, because providing more and less lift is not the only thing that the wind does to the disc, especially in gusty weather, which is the worst. The wind can just catch an edge, which can suddenly cause the disc to wobble. It can cause the disc to lose all of its stability and then just fall to the floor, which is obviously not what we want. So making sure you get extra spin, lots of spin, to make sure the disc stays stable is another very, very important fact. Again, keeping the disc nice and flat, so when you throw it, you want to make sure the disc is very flat so that the spin keeps it stable, and so the wind can't catch it. We also can change how we choose our throws. For example, if we're doing a zone offense, there'll be lots of swinging until we see an opening. And in fair conditions or indoor conditions, you can throw nice roll curves. So it's a lot harder for defenders to intercept the discs. However, in the wind, this is slightly more problematic, because while it's still possible to do, it's just a lot harder. It's a lot more risky, because obviously to throw a roll curve, you have to throw this at an angle, which means there's more chance of a gust of wind knocking it off course. it also means that the disc is being thrown further. Obviously, you're not going in a straight line; you're going around, which inevitably means the disc will travel farther, and there's a higher chance of a gust of wind, knocking the disc out of its path. So that's kind of a decision that you as a thrower will have to make in that situation. Do you throw the slightly riskier roll curve and ensure a defender can't D the disc, or do you throw a much safer, or in terms of the weather, much safer throw so that the wind can't take it? However, it is more likely to get point blocked or intercepted. So there's lots of different strategies when it comes to throwing in the wind, especially team strategies. So how you play, which paths you could take, and all of that, which I don't exactly have time to fully go into. But it is definitely an interesting topic that needs to be covered more. Do any of you guys have any questions?
I have a question. For
My throat is killing me.
we have Sasha typing as well. Oh, we've got Graham who says, how would you change your throw depending on the angle of the wind?
Well, again, this is the if you're throwing into the wind, you want to throw lower, but obviously you want to throw it nice and flat with lots of spin. And again, with the wind, it will go down, so maybe really slightly higher. Crosswind is a very tricky situation because there the disc, there's no specific path. You've got kind of two. I don't want to sound like too technical or anything, but you've got like two vectors where you've got the wind pushing against where you're throwing the disc, and then also where the wind is actually passing the disc, and it's very, very difficult to read how the disc is going to fly in that situation. So I guess that you can kind of practice that. So just practice throwing in Crosswind and try and get a feel for how the disc will fly with different powers, different setups. But just keep the disc nice and flat to avoid as much turbulence as possible, but lots and lots of spin, essentially.
We have Sasha who asks, how do you think we can actively train to throw in bad conditions? Like what drills or what to focus, etc.?
I guess that's just focusing on throwing lots of throws that you would throw in windy conditions. Obviously, without those specific conditions, you're not going to be able to see what the actual results would be. However, throwing like lasers, nice, fast, flat throws with lots and lots and lots of spin, maybe comical amounts of spin in some drills, just to really emphasize the amount of spin that you need to generate in order to keep a disc nice and stable in windy conditions. So definitely throwing drills focusing on the spin.
Does anybody else have any other questions? I have one question. How can you use? How do you think you can use kind of roll curve or IOs kind of to your advantage if it is windy?
That is a very interesting question. I think you have to be a bit more careful with them, especially if you don't have a lot of practice in the wind, because if it can go wrong, and if it does go wrong, it will most likely result in a turnover, which is probably the worst result. Well, second worst, I guess Callahan's pretty bad. So I mean, you can still use them. Again, you got to make sure that there's a lot of spin on the disc to keep the disc stable. It will still fly. It will still do the curve, and it will still be useful, especially if defending teams aren't expecting it. Because in these very windy situations, some teams might just expect the very simple short throws, which means if you are confident throwing a long roll curve round some defense, it's a very risky idea, and I would not recommend. But it can still very easily take defenders by surprise.
Cool, thank you. I don't think we have any other questions, so I think we finish it there. I'd like to say thank you so much for everybody coming, and for our 4 wonderful coaches who gave everybody a little bit of an insight into lots of different tactics and kind of information to do with stuff. So yeah, we'll see you all on Saturday, I suppose, for elections. What else is happening this week? Yeah, so Saturday elections, and then Sunday we will have nearly one of our final interactive trainings. I don't know if there'll be one next week, but I think Sunday might be our final interactive training as well, so look out for the details on that. But thanks for coming, everybody, and yeah, well done to everybody who was talking as well. Bye!